Hey guys, I wanted to do a video on how to win at betting baseball. We got, MLB is a few days away. We're going to give you guys a few spring training vids, and I wanted to do a video giving you some tips, tidbits, strategies per se. I'm not going to go into super detail with strategies just because a lot of them are bullshit anyway. But I wanted to go over some things you need to do and look for when betting baseball, and potentially things to avoid when betting baseball. So this video is going to be, maybe some things might be obvious to some, maybe some will be refreshing, maybe some will be new news. But keep in mind, my dad is the facts man, and he's the best handicapper in baseball. I mean, he hands down the best at handicapping baseball. This has been proven for the last 15, 20 years. Um, and I learned a lot from him. I myself, I also play a lot of daily fantasy sports for baseball. It's been very profitable for me. So I want to give you some strategies here that I use, that I've learned from him and discussed with him as well, um, on how to beat baseball long term. Because at the end of the day, it's not just short sample sizes. You could be successful for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month and a half, but then over time, you slowly, the juice finally gets you. And baseball is not like other sports. You don't have a spread to go with. The line, a point spread to go with. The line is a price, so it's a little different. So I want to go into some nuances, some typical things I look for, and ways to keep your head above water all season long, which at the end of the day, that's all we ever want. So for one thing in baseball, you need to look into, well, first of all, before I say that, you need to get this idea out of your head that teams or players are due. Okay, that is a complete fallacy. It's specifically a fallacy in baseball because baseball is a streaky sport. First of all, the sport in itself has a tremendous amount of variance built into it. Just the fact that your best hitters in the game are getting out 7 times out of 10, and your best pitchers are giving up, an earned run or two, every start. Um, it needs to be known that you need to be following streaks, okay? And I see this all the time, like, oh, I'll have somebody say to me, hey, what do you think? This team won 8 games in a row, now they're traveling on the road. We probably fade them here, right? No. If anything, you play them. You got to jump on winning streaks. Now, I'm not saying every 2 game, 3 game winning streak, you jump right on and you hope for the best. But what I'm saying is, if you were to fade, right? So let's say an East Coast team is traveling west, which is a typical, or West Coast team is traveling east, however the fuck you want to draw it up. When that happens, typically people are like, oh, let's fade the East Coast team traveling west, even though this team might be on an 8 or 9 game winning streak. Okay, so let's go down that hypothetical. You fade them game one, right? And they win. Now they're on a 10 game winning streak. We're like, oh fuck, I guess I gotta fade them again, and they lose. And you're just gonna keep doing this until they lose. Whereas if it was different, if you were following this team on the streak, you'd only lose one time. Why? Because once they lose, you're no longer betting them. It's over. Meanwhile, vice versa, with them continuing to lose, you're just continuing a streak that's just wildly inefficient. And there's so many people that I know that do this, and it's never worked. There's no history behind it. There's no backlogged information. Look, you try to find teams that are playing well, especially the bats, the arms. Sometimes you'll see this. You'll see it in a given season, some two or three different teams go on 12, 13, 14 game winning streaks. Now, I'm not telling you jump on at 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, whatever it is. But what I'm telling you is, if you jump on at the right time, you could easily get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And once they lose, you stop betting them. But don't do the opposite. Don't do the opposite. There's no such thing as teams are due in baseball. And don't be saying like a losing team. Like, for instance, when a good team goes on a losing streak, like a team like the Yankees, if they go on a 4 or 5 game losing streak, oh, no way the Yankees could lose again. Let me tell you something. When bats are cold, they are ice fucking cold. Okay, it's the way the sport is. There's no, like, it's not like teams just find a magic potion and they start drinking like the Space Jam juice. Like, you know what it is, like after a 5 game winning streak, as if the Yankees are going into their dugout, and Bugs Bunny's pumping Space Jam juice into them, and all of a sudden, boom, there goes the losing streak. We're back, guys. It doesn't work like that. Baseball is a streaky sport. It always has been. But again, it's all about picking the right spots with streaks. But what I can promise you is, do not fade streaks in baseball. You're begging yourself to lose money. Another thing that I see often, a lot of people, if a home team is too big of a favorite, like a minus 160, minus 170, minus 180, people love to lay run line and get them at like plus 100 or minus 110, or, oh wow, I got Verlander. I got Verlander at home against, I don't know, at home against the Braves. or at home against the Reds. I don't want to lay minus 180, but I'll lay run line. I'll lay a run and a half at home. When you lay a run and a half at home, you only get 8 at bats because I mean they need to be up 2 runs entering the 8th, and the other team's going to get 9 at bats. They're going to get 9 cracks at beating you. If you're going to lay a run and a half, do it with a team on the road. Now, I'm not saying that you always do it on the road, but I'm saying never do it for a team at home. I don't care how big of a favorite they are. I mean, I don't care how bad the pitching matchup is. I don't care if it's the Yankees against the Marlins and the Yankees are minus 360 or 330 with Tanaka going. It doesn't matter. It's crazy to lay a run and a half at home, and I see so many people that do this. And what it comes down to is greed. It's nothing. There's nothing more to it. But over time, you will get pummeled doing this. Absolutely pummeled. Now, with that said, I'm not telling you, hey, look, take road teams plus 1.5 in those same scenarios. Flip the script. I'm not telling you to do that, but I'm telling you to definitely not lay a run and a half at home. Over time, you're just going to get burned, and it's a shame because I see so many people do it. And there's so many one-run games in baseball. Like, to me, it's unfathomable how often I see that happen. And I tell people all the time, look, if you're going to do it on the road with a road favorite. That's a pretty big favorite. Absolutely, because at least you're going to get your 9 at bats. Don't be silly in doing it with home teams. Look, in baseball, the price matters so much. I mean, you'll see this all the time. Like, you'll see a line open minus 140. We'll give you the Houston Braves scenario, minus 140. Line opens up Houston. Then you see the lineup go minus 160, minus 170, minus 175. And now it's like close to game 7. You're like, interesting. So this line really moved a lot. So it must be some sharp money in Houston. Well, no. Sharp money was on Houston at minus 140. At minus 175, there ain't no more sharp money on Houston. That's why it's staying at 175. It's a price game, okay? You play ping pong. You have to get the right price. Now, whether that means you're going to get a dog, whether that means you're going to bet the favorite, whatever it means to you specifically, build up your own pricing for teams. Try to become an odds maker. Okay, so, and to be clear, if you're not able to create your own lines on games, how do you think you're going to have any success betting them? I mean, you need to become an odds maker of any sport you're betting because you need to know what you can judge is a real line versus where you have an edge. And you got to take 2 teams and say, I will bet this team at this price. I will bet this team at this price. And in the middle, it is a no bet for me. And when I do that scenario, I'm not talking about 2 separate games. I'm talking about the same game. I will bet team A at minus 160. But I will not bet them at minus 165. I will not bet them at minus 170 or beyond. I will bet Team B at plus 140. I will not bet Team B at plus 135. I will not bet Team B at plus 130. If the line is somewhere in between, I am not betting the game. You need to keep standards for yourself because ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself convincing yourself into prices that aren't favorable. And yeah, okay, in one-off scenarios, yeah, that Houston scenario that I gave you at minus 175, maybe it wins. Maybe it does. But then when you do it again and it loses and the guy who had minus 140 is still doing okay, he's only lost now, half a unit because he got the better price, and you at minus 170 have lost almost a full unit. The price matters, and you will see prices jump in baseball. You need to be careful. And make sure you are getting the proper price. But the only way you do that is you got to become an odds maker. You got to slowly become better at betting the sport. And that's not something that happens overnight. There's not some secret formula. My dad has 20, 30 years of experience. I've been betting this sport now for over 10 years. You need to have experience betting it. You need to become your own odds maker, create your own lines to find favorable lines within the numbers that the odds makers are offering you. Now, as I said with the pricing, there's no point spread. So this is why a lot of people who may have found success in basketball, maybe football, college football, whatever, maybe doing like some type of parlay algorithm, maybe some type of grouping of 2-team and 3-team parlays together versus the spread. They'll notice like it doesn't really work in baseball because first of all, money line favorites, they just don't win as often as they do in other sports. There's so much variance built in. I'm not sitting here telling you to blindly start betting dogs because ultimately you're going to go bankrupt. You're going to go bankrupt doing that anyway if you're blindly doing it. But what I'm saying is find favorable spots with the underdogs. With regards to the favorites, make sure you're getting good prices with the favorites. Don't just be like, oh, I love the Yankees today, I'm going to bet them. I don't care what the price is. No. Continue to convince yourself about how the price matters. And over time, it does. In a small sample size, it will not. And trust me, you'll see it. It won't matter in a small sample size. You might go 7-0, laying minus 200 in every game and think, I'm on top of the world. I know the sport better than anybody. But then you lose 3 of those, and all of a sudden you're losing money because you were laying 2 units, or you lose 4 games. Now you're laying 2 units every game because it's minus 200. Now, Now you're losing money despite your 7-game winning streak, and you only lost 4 games on the other side of it. You need to be careful with the price. Now, another thing that I tend to see with a lot of people when they quote unquote handicap a game, and I use quotation marks there because I don't truly think everybody who says they know how to probably handicap baseball knows how to. There's certain things you need to do, certain things you need to not do. BVP, okay, batter versus pitcher statistics. People talk about this shit all the time as if it's fucking gospel and Bible. Okay, BVP in nearly all scenarios doesn't mean anything, and here's why. You don't think the pitchers know? You don't think the pitching coach knows how good hitters are against their own guy? You don't think they know the tendencies to look for? I'm not telling you there's complete randomness to a guy who's 8 for 9 against another pitcher. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you need to be looking at these numbers deeper. Okay, that guy's time of time, bro. This 4 guys hit this pitcher at over 400. 6 combined home runs. This guy's gonna get fucking shelled today or tonight. Meanwhile, if you dig deeper into stats, you'll realize those combined stats are stats for those 4 guys over the last 10 years. And pitchers change their mechanics. Also, hitters change their mechanics. Okay, baseball is a very technical sport in its basis. I mean, pitchers windups, hitters windups, their follow through, their wrist snaps. It's all changing. You see hitters all the time, especially as they get older. They adjust their swing. They adjust their fundamentals, their foundation. They have to adjust because they know pitchers are starting to adjust to them. So look, BVP. Here's what I'll tell you. I'll give you a scenario where BVP might matter in a good way for you if you're looking at those numbers. Okay, if you're lining up a pitcher versus a bunch of bats, and you're like, you know what? There's a few good bats in here, but nothing really crazy, so I'm going to fade it. If you have consecutive bats in an order who absolutely crush a pitcher, so like 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 1, 2, 3, have averages that just crush a pitcher, and it's all recent data, like within like the last year or two, right? Where nothing's changed mechanically with the hitters or the pitcher, right? Because then you start saying to yourself, okay, well, you know what? Now, since they're jointing in order, this pitcher has to face these 3 guys back to back to back, and all 3 of them hit him at over 400. So I like my chances for 2 of these guys to get on base, maybe one of them to get an extra base hit to grab a run. There, I could see an edge potentially. Only really there though, because again, if you have 6 guys that hit a guy at we'll say 350, right? You're like 6 guys in the sign of crush this guy, but the 3 guys in the middle don't even have a hit against them in their career. Maybe they're combined 0 for 16. But you didn't even look at that because what were you looking for? Looking for the guys that hit well against them. Meanwhile, you got 3 black holes in the middle of that lineup that are instant outs or potential double plays. These are things you need to look for if you're a BVP truther, like a flat earther. Thinks as if that matters. Make sure you're doing it in the right way. And again, you need consecutive guys in the order for that to even matter. Now, home field advantage is another thing I want to talk about in baseball because it's something that is the least advantage or least edge in the sports between football, basketball, and of course, in this being baseball. It doesn't matter as much. You either have a good arm going for the day, and you'll have a nice advantage there, or your bats are swinging well, or you're just a better team. Home team is not as important. I'm not saying it's not important. Obviously, you're going to ride the crowd, but it's just a different sport. It's a much slower played sport. The crowd can impact a little bit, but you could use it to your advantage or against you. Home field just doesn't matter as much as it does in other sports. So when you're handicapping, don't look at it like, I want to only bet home teams or I want to bet home teams in these scenarios. No. It doesn't matter. Now, this is also not a sport where you should be doing moneyline parlays with favorites, okay? This is a sport more than ever, and as I mentioned before, moneyline favorites go down. It happens, okay? A pitcher who's thrown, who's gone his last 4 or 5 starts, giving up 1 run, gets completely shelled, okay? And now you have a 3-team parlay where that was a minus 300 favorite and it lost. So whoops, there goes that parlay. You're going to see this happen all the time in baseball, okay? Betting moneyline team favorites in baseball is just not something that's sustainable long term. On this other swing of that, because I always like to give you the other perspective, it doesn't mean to start going and betting live dogs or moneyline favorite or moneyline underdog. It says parlays. Not to say you can't hit one, I'm sure you could, but keep in mind it's just not something long term that's sustainable. Laying all that juice with favorites, especially like run line. Like I see people parlaying run lines, like it's just wild. It's just wild. Parlaying big favorites is just not ideal, and it would not be something that I would do. And again, this goes back to the whole. This is something that's backlogged losers every year, year after year. So don't be silly and don't be doing that kind of stuff. Now, as I mentioned, variance is greater in baseball than it is in any other sport, and that's truly because of the basis of how the game is played. Again, your best hitters in the game are going to get out 7 times out of 10. Your best pitchers are going to give up, on average 1 to 2 runs a game at least, and they'll get shelled, 6 or 7 times a game. In basketball, you know what you're going to get out of LeBron James. I mean, in football, for the most part, Drew Brees, Brady, they're going to get you their 300 yards, their few touchdown passes. But in baseball, it doesn't work like that. Your best hitters go through cold streaks. Your best hitters in the game, will go 10, 12, 15 games without a home run. They'll go on, 9, 10 game streaks without getting a hit. These are things, you need to understand when you're handicapping the sport, that there's so much variance built into it. And the numbers, they really just don't mean a whole lot. I mean, don't get me wrong. In certain scenarios, maybe they do. Maybe if you can pinpoint a certain specific number that makes a lot of sense, fine. But as a whole, like the against the spread, it just doesn't matter. Like against the spread. I mean, this team's most recent win-loss record, teams against the spread record with the run line, like it's just all nonsense. You want to ride streaks in baseball as much as you can. You want to fade the losing teams as much as you can. And look, umpires in baseball, they matter. Okay, and it changes year to year. Like you'll sometimes see one umpire who's got a generally large strike zone one year. The next year he's calling a lot of balls, and vice versa. I mean, what you need to realize is start finding out these umps that have the gigantic strike zones, that have giving a hard time to pitchers. With the smaller strike zones, right? Because here's the thing: look at people's batting averages. Okay, on 1-0 counts versus 0-1 counts, large disparity in difference. Okay, when hitters are up against a 1-0 count, their average is going to be easily 100 points higher. 2-0 versus 1-1, 3-1 versus 2-2. It's a hitter's count. So what does that mean? The hitters are more than likely going to get a fastball, and they know this. That's why those numbers are what they are. So if you have an ump that's calling games and calling a bigger strike zone, you want to start thinking about playing those games under. If you have an ump that's calling a smaller strike zone, you want to start playing those games over. Because you're going to get caught in scenarios where it's 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 3-1, and there's going to be hitters counts, and there's going to be a lot of juicy pitches to hit. And over the course of a game, it should work out in your favor. Now, not every ump is like that, and this is what I mean, that like it can vary from game to game. And look, sometimes pitchers just have electric stuff, and it is what it is. You're going to lose the game if you bet it over, or you're going to win the game, or you're going to lose the game if you bet it under, depending on how the pitcher goes. But you can use the umps to your advantage and start grabbing this data. Try to find the data on which umpires are calling strikes, or which umpires have a bigger strike zone, which ones have a smaller one. And again, use it to your advantage, because it will only help you in the long run. Only help you in the long run. Now, some sites I use to get my own data. I use Fangraphs, Baseball Reference, Statcast, the obvious, MLB, ESPN. But again, I'm not a big stat proponent guy for baseball. One of the strategies I like to use, and my dad's always liked to use this, is targeting one game with like 6 or 7 different bets. And here's what I mean: like you can bet in a game. So let's just say there's a game you really like the over, right? Total's 8.5, first half's 4.5. You really like the over for the game. So you bet the game. You bet the first half over. You bet the game over. Then you bet, will there be a run scored in the first inning, which is a very popular bet. I think it should be even more popular than it is, because will a run be scored in the first inning is a very streaky thing. You will see this all the time. You can backlog data. You'll see it. Certain pitchers, I don't know if it's just that, their warm-up's not good, or they just come out, a little ballsy. Maybe some pitchers I know come out and just throw a lot of fastballs right away just to get themselves in the rhythm and the flow, and then they end up getting shelled that way early. Certain pitchers just tend to put themselves in situations where they're giving up runs in the first inning. And then again, you have 2 at-bats, and you have the top of the order for both teams. So use it to your advantage, especially if it's, will a run be scored in the first inning? You only got to like 120 or 125 or 130. Try to find those types of spots, because then again, this goes back to the same game of saw bet. You can attack a game on six bets in one game. You can say, yes, there will be a run scored in the first inning. Yes, over 4.5 runs for the game. Yes, over 8.5 runs. Yes, 4.5 over first half. Yes, 8.5 runs for the game. Yes, over team A's team total for runs 4. Yes, A team total B runs 4. So right now you have 6 bets there. You could also go over total runs, hits, and errors, like 25.5, 26.5, whatever it is for the game. So keep in mind, you can attack a game 7 different ways. Now, you might make the argument, oh, well, what if you lose? You're going to lose 7 units. Well, it could not even play out in your favor, and you could still go 6-3. You could have one of those pitchers dominate the game, but one of those other teams could get you more or less everything you need. You could go over your team total for the one team. You can go over the first half if you get a 5-run game for 5-run start from the one team. Let's say you get 2 runs from the other, and you get 2 more runs to end the game, 7-2. You've now won the total for the game. Your total runs, hits, and errors becomes a win as well. You don't even have to handicap the game perfectly to be in the positive. So just a strategy. And it's a strategy I know my dad likes to use, but it's got to be the perfect storm. It's not something you do often, but it's got to be the perfect storm where you can really hone in and go practically not necessarily all in on a game, but you put a lot of units in one game because you're heavily invested in your research, your knowledge, whatever you want to call it, your handicapping process. And again, it's got to be the perfect storm, but my dad does it all the time, and he's made so much money off of it. And, I've started to see it, and I've started to make my own money off of it, following the same strategy. Again, you're looking for those spots, those isolated spots where you can really pound the same side of a game, in this case, the total, whether it's over or under. Now, one of the big things to look for, specifically with pitchers and hitters, if you're looking to at least somewhat project the future, would be line drive rate. Now, line drive rate, for those that don't know, might sound a little simple here, but line drive rate is just basically the percentage of line drives that come off the bat. Now, that could be for a batter, or that could be for a pitcher, like as in this many pitchers batted balls are line drives, which if a pitcher's higher than like 50 or 60%, regression's coming. Like for instance, a pitcher might have an extremely high line drive rate against him, but his ERA might be 3. So what does that mean? It means that regression's coming because people are smoking the ball off him, and somehow they're finding gloves. This is some of what happens with Bartolo Colon. People wonder why Bartolo Colon sometimes pitches a gem. It's not really that pitches a gem. It's just that his line drives find gloves. And that goes into the variance of the sport. You could be a pitcher who is on his game, and you get shelled. You could be a pitcher who is all over the place in below hitter counts, and the hitters are just missing balls, or it's just been crazy catch after crazy catch after crazy catch for line drives, or guys are tracking balls down in the outfield. The guy makes a crazy scoop at first, and is able to throw the ball to the pitcher as he hits first to get the runner out. You'll see this often, but again, this is the variance that's built into the sport. You need to understand that from the get-go. Realize it, swallow that pill. But again, line drive rate's big to try to project the future a bit, because you could tell what pitchers really are due to struggle and which hitters maybe are due to struggle or due to improve. I remember it was about a year and a half ago when Giancarlo Stanton was hitting like 219 at the All-Star break, and everybody was like, oh, he's done, he sucks. What's with his average? It's like 219 or 210, but like his line drive rate was like second highest in baseball. What did he do? The second half of the season, he hit like 35 home runs. Or 30 home runs, and his average was like 295 or 300 to end the year. He ended up ending the year at 265 or 270, but he had a strong second half. Why? Because that line drive rate, it's only a matter of time before that goes into your favor. So use line drive rate because it helps. It's definitely a big sport for the daily fantasy sports junkies as well. And as always, with these things, you want to look for when betting the sport, limit your bets. Again, there is not 3 to 4, 5 favorable bets in every day. This is a different sport. I mean, this is a sport that's every day, and it's the same teams playing every day. It's not like college basketball where like you have 2 or 3 teams going within 4 or 5 different days, or or football where it's once a week. You have the same teams going every day, or even NBA. Like NBA, you have a back-to-back once in a while or a few times a year, but it's not often. Baseball, you're playing every day, so you're going to see the same teams every day. And realize that there's not always going to be favorable spots, but use line movement to your advantage. Find favorable spots, and over time, get the best number and get the best price. The price is what matters most, but ultimately, limit your bets. Okay, this is less is more. Less is more, and just to recap some things to do. You want to follow streaks. You want to fade losing teams. Will a run be scored in the first inning is always one of my dad and myself's favorite bets to make. So use those, follow some of those trends that you see for certain pitchers that just always seem to give up a run in the first inning, or a run just happens to get scored in every game they pitch in the first inning, whether it's for them or against them. Don't lay one run don't do a run line bet with a home team. It's just crazy. You're only getting 8 at bats. As I mentioned, prices matter most. This is not an against the spread type of sport. BVP for the most part doesn't matter. I gave you an isolated scenario where it might, but for the most part, it's useless numbers. Home field matters a lot less in baseball than it does in the sports of football and basketball. This is not the sport to be betting money line favorites in. Variance is far greater in this sport than any of the others. Again, your best players get out 7 times out of 10. Umpires matter, so begin to use these numbers to your advantage in betting totals. And again, use sites like Fangraphs, Baseball Reference, Statcast, MLB, ESPN for some stats, and utilize line drive rate to kind of project how maybe pitchers will do in the future and how hitters might do in the future as well. It's one of the most indicating stats you can use to project the future of hitters and pitchers. And again, limit bets as always. Want to thank you guys for watching this video. My dad has his own video on this as well, where he talked about it. I'll post it in the comments so you can see that as well. But ultimately, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I want this to be a successful season for us, for the channel. Going to give you a lot of free plays, a lot of free picks, a lot of daily fantasy sports information. If you're a big daily fantasy sports guy, definitely drop a comment below because I want to help you. I've had a tremendous amount of success in daily fantasy sports, specifically for baseball, FanDuel, DraftKings. So I could post some videos on there. I could even maybe post a video or two a week on who I like for the slates, if that's what you're into. I know for the most part we're all sports bettors here, but I know I'm a big daily fantasy sports player, especially this time of year. So could definitely help you guys out there. Again, want to thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you are not. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. And again, I look forward to seeing some comments below, responding to you. And I'll be back with some other videos. If you have any questions on the specifics of baseball, I can maybe do a separate video on it. But maybe on some legitimate, full-on, start-to-finish betting strategies. Not to say that they all will work or won't work. None of them are truly backlogged, but I can at least get you the expertise in them so you can speak on them and understand about them, whether maybe you want to do them or try them a little differently with some tweaks and or some of your own lingo in that way. But again, want to thank you guys for watching. I'll be back with another video tomorrow.